Hey, everybody. I hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the Word. And today, that word is rejection. Rejection. Now, Zechariah chapter 11, we were talking about the future restoration that was coming, but then you kind of take a step back and he talks about some things that were going to fall apart beforehand. Even the way that at the time it said you're going to still face some other destruction and other things are coming in the near future before that restoration, right? What would be the cause for or require the need of having that restoration in the end? And he says, well, it's going to be because everything's going to fall apart even worse than it is. And so in this chapter, you'll see that Zechariah kind of, from his stance, kind of takes the place, kind of filling the role in his writing of that of the Messiah, like speaking from the Messiah's point, from his point of view. And so it's really interesting. It's a lot of different things in this chapter, and I'll be honest, it's some of the passages you look and I was reading even one commentator, and he said, one verse it was you could look in 40 different commentaries and get 40 different things. So some of these things we know that one day it will be clear, and we know that we can understand what we need to. So as we look today, even looking ahead, I think it's clear to see through this the illusion and prophecy of the Messiah and his coming. So we'll pick up in verse 7, read down to verse 14, and maybe some of this will make a little bit more sense to you. He says, So I fed the flock for slaughter, in particular, the poor of the flock. I took for myself two staffs. The one I called Beauty, and the other I called Bonds, and I fed the flock. I dismissed the three shepherds in 1 month. My soul loathed them, and their soul also abhorred me. Then I said, I will not feed you. Let what is dying die, and what is perishing perish. Let those that are left eat each other's flesh. And I took my staff Beauty and cut it in two, that I might break the covenant which I had made with all the peoples. So it was broken on that day. Thus the poor of the flock who were watching me knew that it was the word of God of the Lord. When I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out for my wages 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter. That princely price they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Then I cut in two my other staff, Bonds, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. So first, I will say, as you hear, he says, "Well, wait a minute, he's breaking the covenants." We didn't think that would happen because God doesn't do those things. Well, remember the writing here that the poetry type writing that he's using, and it's not a particular covenant part. Doesn't appear to be a particular covenant language that he's talking about, because the people, when they hear it or they see him cut the staff in two, they already understand it is the word of God. So it was at least the conditional parts of the relationship that he's talking about at this time. But you basically have that that mercy being the first one, and unity being the second one. And so it's at this point that you read through this chapter and you see, we were just talking about how merciful God is and gracious, and He is. But He's saying here at this point that He's prophesying about, He's gonna basically, I don't want to say run out of mercy, but He's had enough. And so He says, I've been merciful enough, and that I'm finally drawing the line. Well, the line that He draws appears to be when the people reject the Messiah. And you'll see as he's saying it from his point of view, Zechariah saying it from the Messiah's point of view. And it's interesting that he says these three shepherds. And that's what I was alluding to earlier, that many commentators have different thoughts and there's different possible interpretations. I'll be honest, probably the one that I would lean towards agreeing with and understanding the arguments there is because in Luke chapter 9, verse 22, that Jesus says that he would be rejected And he says he'd be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes. And so it makes perfect sense because then he says he would be killed as well. So it makes sense that these three, maybe even representing, right, the shepherds that should have been leading the people. And wasn't that the whole issue? Is that these people, as you read through this whole chapter, they should have been leading the people in the right direction. Instead, they're taking advantage of them, selling them for money, making money off of them, and they have no reason, they have no care, they have no compassion for the people that follow them. And so it makes sense that these three would be, that he would have that relationship with them. He'd be upset with them, and they can't stand him either. But as you see, as you go along too, you see the use of the 30 pieces of silver, which was basically the price of a maimed slave at the time. And so he says, look, you take that money, it was a ridiculous price. And he basically was insulting, it was a sarcastic amount to even say that Zechariah was worth that much, that his ministry was worth that much. And then even more so as we look to the Messiah, what a ridiculous thought to think that the Messiah's life was worth 30 pieces of silver. It's worth so much more, and yet they put a ridiculous price like that. Yet we know that Judas, what? He sells Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. And then remember, when he is upset, he goes back and he throws the money back down. And here that he is commanded to throw the money down. So you can see the illusions that's coming, and all the other things he's talking about with Messiah being rejected and then that unity being broken. It's exactly what happened after the Messiah died and was raised to life again. Because in 70 AD, when Jerusalem was ransacked last, right, and everything was destroyed, and the people, as you read through this, the people did actually at that time end up eating other people's flesh. A devastating time. But the brotherhood was broken up, and there was so much clash in between Israel and Judah even then that's what made it that much easier for the Romans to be successful. So as you follow along in Zechariah, know that the rejection of the Messiah was already prophesied. So when Jesus came and was rejected by his own, he was not surprised. But also, every time someone rejected him, it was just further fulfilling both the prophecy of God and fulfilling the fact that there would be a need for a restoration in the future. Now, last 30 seconds or so, what do we take from this for us today? Well, first, we need to make sure that we're not also rejecting the Messiah, first and foremost. Don't reject him, but then also don't reject the Word of God. Right? You notice that even when things seem to be going bad, and even when our nation, sometimes when things seem to be going wrong in our eyes, as a body of believers, we can look at it and say, you know what? I know this is from the Lord. It may seem bad and it may seem evil on the front. It may seem like evil is winning, but it's the same way as it was in Israel's time and throughout history. That when you turn yourself over to sin, then eventually God is going to just turn you over and let you have what you've asked for. So today, let's make sure that we don't reject Jesus, but let's make sure also that we do not reject the Word of God. God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.